Aloha, everybody. This is the Hawaii Family Forum Triple F podcast for faith, family, and freedom. I am your host, Eva Andrade. And as usual, I'm here with my co host, Jim Hochberg. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Aloha.
We are going to do something exciting today. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the legislative process in the state of Hawaii, and we're going to talk about the difference between a C3 and a C4. So you want to stay tuned because by the end of today's show and next week's show, which are going to be connected, you'll be able to make a difference right here in Hawaii. So let's chat about that. Jim,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim. Every time we do our shows, the biggest thing we get, especially when we do our dog and pony show
In the churches.
in the churches.
Which, please call Eva and say, we want you to come to our church and do a teaching for the congregation, and we show up for free.
Yes. And by the end of today's show, you'll understand why it's important that you hear from both of us, because there are some things that one of us can do and some things one of the other one can do and some things neither of us can do.
And
Wait,
people in the
some things that
churches.
neither of us can
Well,
do.
and
Well,
the thing is, though, people in the churches always want you to do what you can't do.
no, we can't make people vote. We can't make people vote. That
Well,
is
we
one
don't
thing.
want to, because
don't
the
wanna do that.
Constitution is a privileged voting thing, and we don't want to force mandating it,
Yes. So, what I want to do, first of all, is start with the disclaimer. When we're talking about political parties, whether Republican, Independent, or Democratic, neither Hawaii Family Advocates nor Hawaii Family Forum will ever promote one particular political party. So,
But can I make one correction?
no, you may
It
not
is
ever
not
correct me.
the Democratic Party. It's the Democrat Party. Democratic is an adjective or an adverb, and it is the Democrat Party. And I really don't like it when the news calls them the Democratic Party, because it imbues them with qualities that they may not have.
Okay, those of you watching in the comments, you let me know if you've ever called it the Democratic Party before so I can have sick Jim on you.
You just did.
No, I know I did because you just corrected me in front of the millions
It's
of viewers
the Democrat, not the Democratic.
we have millions of viewers, millions of fans. So,
Well, the clock is ticking, but it
Yes.
hasn't moved.
oh, well, that is really good. I like when time doesn't change because then I can stay young forever. Forever young. Okay, so anyway, Jim, let's talk about the differences between a C3 and a C4. And what I want to do first is I want to set up a little bit of what we're going to talk about later on in the show. And then, as like to do, because I want people to hang in there, right? You got to get to the end to hear this, right? So, we're going to start with this. In Hawaii, we have 51 House members and we have 25 Senate members. And half, I wish I could say half of them were Republicans and half of them are Democrats, but that's not the case. Here in
Not
Hawaii,
even close.
out of 51 members of the House, we have 4 members that are Republican. And then in the Senate,
And all the rest are
and
Democrats.
all the rest are Democrats. And then in the Senate, there is 1 Republican, and all the rest are Democrats. So Hawaii is a very strongly blue state. So the reason I point that out first is because in order to make a difference in a state like Hawaii that has this very skewed balance of power, you have to be able to plug into different aspects of the legislative process. And we're going to talk about that later. But in order to do that, people have to understand that there are some things a 501c3 organization can do, and there are some things that a 501c3 organization cannot do. So Hawaii,
And the thing, though, is for the viewers, the C3 Hawaii Family Forum and the C4 Hawaii Family Advocates exercise within our realms to help you affect the government that you own. Hopefully, you treat it that way.
right. So let's first of all, let's start with the basics. So 501c3 is a C3 organization that it's a designation that was given to us by the IRS. So we did not get that designation from God. We did not get that designation from
But if you're a church, you get all the benefits of the charity status of a 501c3, and you are not required to file anything at the IRS. Churches, because of the First Amendment, are deemed 501c3s automatically. I can't tell you how many churches have gone through that process and filed anyway, but they don't have to.
Yeah, so we're assuming that people watching this understand that churches too have filed 501c3 designations, and so therefore, because they filed the designation with the IRS, and the IRS has come back and said, yes, you are a 501c3. Here are the things you can do as a 501c3, and here are some things you cannot do. Now, the first thing that a 501c3 can do, so this includes churches, is education, and that's what Jim and I are doing today. We're educating. So a pastor at any time can get up from the pulpit and they can educate their congregants on an issue.
Correct.
Hawaii Family Forum can go out there and into the public, and we can help churches understand an issue, whether it's something like physician-assisted suicide, whether it's abortion, whether it's domestic violence or housing and homelessness. We can do that until the dogs come home. Until the cows come home.
So
we can do that.
What is the difference between educating, which you're allowed to do, and something that a pastor might want to throw in his education that's beyond educating that he can't do?
We'll get into some samples as we move along. So Jim represents Hawaii Family Advocates, which is a 501c4 designated organization. And basically 501c4s are set up. There's that term that the IRS gives 501c4s. What is that term?
I don't know what you're asking me.
Okay, well, and I don't know how to ask you what I'm asking you.
mean social?
Yes, that's social
okay.
welfare.
Yeah, social welfare.
So it's a social welfare organization. So basically what that means is donations to a 501c3 are fully tax deductible. You cannot get a tax deduction if you give to a 501c4.
But if you give to a 501c4, you greatly magnify the power of your vote at the next election, because that's the main thing that I like doing, being a C4.
Right. So Jim and I always start our, when we do our dog and pony show, we
By the way, are you the pony and I'm the dog, or
you're
are
the
you
dog.
the dog?
You're the dog.
I like dogs. They don't eat as much as ponies too.
Ooh, let the dogs out. Okay, I know that's old. But anyway, so the point is that Jim and I, we start at one end of the stage and we say, okay, 501c3, 501c4 can both do education. So Jim and I will take a couple steps forward together. The next thing that 501c3 organizations can do is we can educate people on how a legislator votes on an issue.
Correct.
So during the legislative process, Hawaii Family Forum will send out notices. We'll tell you this bill is being tracked at the state capitol. Here's some talking points for the bill. Here's how you get involved on the bill. As a 501c3 organization, I can do that. One of the things, and it's a little stickler point for some of the 501c3s, is Hawaii Family Forum designated the H option when we filed for our 501c3. And basically what that did is it gave us a little bit more of a leeway to do a little bit more lobbying. And that's what we're talking about right now.
And the restriction on lobbying is a percentage of your total annual time and resources.
And it's not sales, it's expenditures.
Correct.
So whatever we expend in a year, a certain percentage of that can be designated for lobbying. And to make it even more confusing, that designation has to be split between direct lobbying and indirect lobbying. There is a difference.
There's a formula that you've got to be within, and 1 year you guys didn't stay within it, and you paid a little bit of excise tax. No big deal.
Yeah. So what that means is in a year, because we have, as a 501c3, we have at the end of the year, we have a certain amount of expenditures. And so in that percentage, most of it, about 75%, can be done for direct lobbying. And what that means is that I can go down to the state capitol. I can sit in a legislator's office. I can tell them I don't like this bill. I like this bill. I can work with them on language on the bill. So of that percentage, 75% can be used for that. It's the 25% that's called indirect lobbying that is the problem. And
Which
when
is
I
when
say
you send people
yes,
information telling them to do
yes,
certain things on
exactly.
bills.
So if Hawaii Family Forum or any 501c3, and the reason we're educating you about this is because we have seen, especially here in Hawaii, we have seen some organizations that are 501c3s and they confuse people between C4, C3, and people don't know what they're doing. And well, let's make it clear. Jim and I don't like the constraints. We definitely believe that pastors should be able to preach from the pulpit without any constraints from the government. We acknowledge that we believe that, but we also we try to be good at what we do so that we don't get in trouble because, especially us, we're a 501c3 organizations. You're putting your trust in us by giving us your money. So we want to make sure we are being above reproach and that we're doing what God has asked us to do. So we're following the rules. We may not like it, but we follow the rules because we are proud to be American citizens. We love this country and we want to give the very best of who we are.
Absolutely.
So sorry, I'll get back off my soapbox now.
So a good way to know whether you're a C3 or a C4. The C3, and it's sort of, for me, it's automatic. But if you had to picture it, the IRS code has Section 501. And under Section 501 is subparagraph C, and under subparagraph C is subparagraph, so 501c3 or 501c4. So it's actually the citation to the section in the statute, which is a really weird thing to call something. I don't think it happens anywhere else, but that's where it comes from.
It is, that's where it comes from. So again, making it so that you understand what that means. It means, again, during the legislative session that we can send out a notice to you. We can tell you, okay, here's the bill. Here's what it does. We want you to call and we want you to say vote against this bill, or we want you to vote for the bill. C4 could also do that. If Jim wanted to send those notices out through Hawaii Family Advocates, he could do so, but he allows Hawaii Family Forum to do that. So he partners with us so that we put out the information of what's happening during the legislative process.
We don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, Hawaii's a very small place, and if everybody's playing in the sandbox, put it this way. I want y'all to picture it this way, right? You're in the sandbox and there's one scooper and you've got 5 people playing in the sandbox.
What are we scooping?
Why does your mind automatically go there?
Or is it the sand?
It's the sand,
Okay,
Mr.
I just
Hochberg.
wondered. I wondered.
My goodness.
I wondered.
My goodness. If they're all 5 people are fighting over that one scooper, it's not, nobody's going to be able to use it.
Correct.
So we understand that there are some really good organizations right here in Hawaii, and we want to bless the ones that are doing good at the job they're doing, rather than us jumping into the sandbox and saying that we want to be the new king of the sandbox, right? So we send out that notice, and that's okay. Now, after the bill has been voted on by the legislature, Hawaii Family Forum as a C3 is allowed to send out notices saying Representative X voted for this bill. Senator Z voted against this bill. So scorecards, we are allowed to do scorecards.
But
now,
you got to be fair.
We have to be
fair. You
can't
make it look like you're supporting one party or one candidate. And that's where people get in trouble sometimes, because they miss that point and they use the scorecard avenue to actually electioneer.
Yes. And that's where the C4 comes in, because if I'm sending out a notice saying that Representative X voted for the bill and Senator Y voted against it, what Jim could do if he sent out something through the C4 is he could say, Hawaii Family Advocates strongly oppose this bill and Senator so-and-so voted for it. So therefore, maybe the next time these guys come up for election, you may not want to vote for them. They could do that. We could not. So when people during an election year want me to tell them who to vote for, I'm never going to do that, because I would be stepping outside of the sandbox.
So if I was a viewer, I might be thinking to myself, who made all these weird rules? Why can't we just do what we want? I want to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, you talk about that.
So Woodrow Wilson was a president of the United States around the time of the First World War. Because of him, we have personal income tax. We didn't have personal income tax before he made that amendment with everybody's support that passed it. So until there was income tax, it didn't matter what churches said. It didn't matter what businesses said because there wasn't this tax thing didn't exist. So then going forward from the First World War up to 1954, there also was no restriction on political things for these nonprofits that the tax code created. But in 1954, Lyndon Baines Johnson, remember him? He was the vice president for Kennedy, and then he became president after Kennedy was assassinated. Before that, in 1954, not in 1964 or whatever it was, he was running for Senate re-election in Texas, and he was getting some really bad opposition or some strong opposition from some charitable organizations that were not churches. And so the Johnson Amendment was made to the IRS code in 1954 because he sponsored it and it got passed and it bears his name to today. And what it says is 501c3s cannot be involved in electioneering, which is why all of these weird rules and requirements. So if there was a challenge to this Johnson Amendment, which there's a lot of talk in Congress about doing and stuff, it could go away. But in the meantime, we're stuck with it, and we have been for 70 years now.
And there are some pastors that do not care. In fact, the Alliance Defending Freedom has a pulpit initiative that they do every year because there are a bunch of pastors that don't like being told that they can't preach from the pulpit. Now, to be clear, these pastors want to say from the pulpit, do not vote for this person because, and then say why.
But wait, let me also put this in this context. I think ever since at least Bill Clinton ran for president the first time, I clearly remember churches on the nightly national news having Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, the people that ran against George W. Bush, the Democrat candidates for president in churches on the news asking for votes, which is electioneering in a church, which is a 501c3, which is not permitted.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever hearing of them being punished.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to say something pretty controversial. And, you know, as I mentioned before, Jim and I don't always agree on everything. And I have a feeling Jim's not going to agree with this, but this is my feeling on this. I know that pastors should be allowed to preach whatever they want from the pulpit. The government shouldn't be telling a pastor what they can and cannot preach. But when it comes to the electioneering part of it, I do have some concerns personally because I want you to think about this for a moment. Let's use a big church as an example. Let's use the Assemblies of God because they're a big church. There's a lot of churches around there. If all the pastors were allowed to just all go up there and say, I don't like this candidate. Now, can you imagine what would happen if one of the pastors in one of the other Assemblies of God disagreed? And so from one church, you've got this guy going, he's a good guy, and then you've got another one. What could happen in the body of Christ is there could be a lot of confusion. Now, on one hand, you want them to be able to preach and be free to preach. But on the other hand, is the church really the place for that?
And my answer to that is the Black Robe Regiment, which you know very well. The Revolutionary War in our country against Great Britain, which gave us our country based on the Declaration of Independence, the military officers were the pastors in the churches that wore black robes, because that was the fashion of the day for preachers. And they were known by the King of England and the military guys in the continent here, you know, in the British Army. They were known as the Black Robe Regiment. We wouldn't have had a Revolutionary War if it weren't for them. So I fully endorse pastors from the pulpit saying anything they want.
Well, here's where I'll agree with Jim. If all the pastors were preaching the gospel truth, the unchangeable, unshakable gospel of Jesus Christ, they wouldn't need to name a candidate, because the people would be sitting there and they would know that this person doesn't fit in this gospel narrative. And I think then
only
we'd
if
be
we
okay.
didn't have radio, TV, and the internet where they're getting other info.
Well, that's
If
why you
all
want to
their
stay
info
plugged into
came
shows
from
like
the
this.
pastor,
Although, again, I want to give the disclaimer: this show is an opinion show too. It's Jim and I's opinion. We are not a news channel. We're not a news outlet. But what we believe we are, is spreading the gospel.
Correct.
And we're standing on gospel values. And you can bring that into politics. You can, and you should.
you have to.
You absolutely
must.
must. So so let's continue with this 501c3 C4. So we talked about how your organization could actually come out and really draw the line that this particular legislator did or did not vote in the way we want. So maybe don't consider voting for them. But there's another step that, okay, by this time the C3 organization is no longer in the picture. So now
No, you're still back doing the stuff you're allowed to
we're
do.
we're busy doing all the stuff we can do, but now we're in full C4 territory. And what can happen with a C4 organization during an election year is they can actually endorse a candidate,
We do.
and they do.
We send mailers to voters saying we actually get to create our own version of what the candidates mail you incessantly the last month of an elect before you vote, where you get all these cards in the mail and they are colorful and they got messages on them. Well, we do that too without talking at all to the candidate or the party or the campaign about it because we can't coordinate. And we put our own messages and our own pictures and our own information, and we mail them to voters that we think, based on the data that we have access to, are going to be more likely than not to vote for that person because we like them, or not vote for that person because we don't like them.
Yeah, and keep in mind that anybody can start up a C4 if they follow all the right paperwork and do what they're supposed to do. But one of the benefits of plugging into a group like Hawaii Family Advocates is they do their due diligence when they endorse a candidate. So if you ever see an endorsement by Hawaii Family Advocates on a candidate, they've done their homework, and
That's true.
they've made sure that nothing weird is going to happen in the person coming out, because we all know how that goes, right?
Well,
You get
we
behind a
can't
candidate.
make sure nothing weird comes out.
Well, you do
but-
your best. You do
Yeah,
your
what
due
we
diligence.
do is we pay a private investigator to do a full background search for us on the people we think we want to endorse, and we interview them with the information in that packet, which is always kind of fun because they don't know you know all these things, and you ask them these questions and you force them to tell you. And based on how it comes out in the interview, they may not actually in person be very good candidates, or they may be very good candidates. You don't know. But if we endorse, it's because we like what they stand for. We trust the history that we've dealt with. And so we believe going forward, they'll be good representatives of our opinion.
So here's a caution that I want to give to you. And I don't care what state you live in. You might be watching this and you live in Texas or Washington or wherever. Just because a Christian or a pastor says, hey, vote for this person. Now you want to trust the pastor, and obviously the pastor has, some knowledge of this person maybe, but the point is that they may not know something that could ultimately come up in this candidate's past, or that might hurt them, or
Well,
might
the
hurt
truth is, the opposing candidate's campaign certainly also paid a private investigator to look into the other candidate. So it's going to come up in the last couple of days to keep people from. Although, it's really weird now because we vote for like 3 years every day. It's not 3 years, but, month. So it's harder to get that surprise thing with the same big effect than when we used to have a day of voting.
I know it's such a conundrum we're in, because then the candidate, they could be a really good candidate, especially as Christians. Some of us have testimonies, which means we have come from a very bad place in our life. Maybe we were a drug addict, or we had some kind of a bad experience as someone in our youth, and then we get saved, we turn our life around, and we suddenly become this great Christian, and then that could hurt us in running for public office. In fact, we saw that right here in Hawaii.
And it's really sad because the community should be as redemptive as is, worthy, but it doesn't work that way.
So we're not telling you by any means, if you have something in your past, that you shouldn't run for office, but you should be prepared for what could possibly come up. So before January, or actually in June, by the time that the Hawaii Office of Elections puts out the name of the candidates, up until that point that you become an official candidate, reach out to Hawaii Family Advocates. And
we do candidate training.
They do candidate training.
We will help you figure out if you have a chance in your district, because it's district centric. It depends on who lives in the area you're running for. There's a lot of factors. We're very happy to work with potential candidates. Once you file your papers, we can't work with you. We can work separately to support your thing, but we can't talk to you about it. We can't help you. It's just the way we're an independent expenditure non-candidate committee in the election law parlance, and that's just the way we have to do it.
So during an election year, what you can expect from us is you can expect Hawaii Family Forum as a 501c3 organization to do a voter guide. It is a 501c3 approved voter guide, which means that we're not making an opinion on any particular candidate. We're just providing to you information about the candidates. We give you their website so you can go check out. We make a PDF that has interactive links on it so that if they don't respond to our survey, you can go right to them and ask them these questions. And then we go back to our education and we allow the C4 to do the heavy hitting. So make sure you go to hawaiifamilyadvocates.com to find out more information. And as always, go to hawaiifamilyforum.org to learn more about what we do in the community. And like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe and hit that notification button so you'll know every time we upload a new video. And as we always say, comment, comment, comment. We want to hear from you.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Stay tuned for part 2, because once they get elected, then they're in office, and we want to walk you through the Hawaii state legislative process. So next week, we'll see you then. Mahalo, everybody.